Ba, 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 ba. I feel like I need a theme song for these live shows. Get my drinking in now, since I usually talk nonstop for 45 minutes and lose my voice. Get thirsty. What's up, guys? What's up, Packer Nation, Packer fans? Yeah, what a crazy weekend. It's Monday. Lots of things to talk about. I'm sure the questions are going to be pouring in. Pouring another questionnaire. How's my day going, Grant? My day is going all right. It's winding down. This is always the highlight of my Mondays, to get on the interwebs, chat with all the Packer fans. I mean, it's playoff time. We got to enjoy a bye week and just enjoy some really good football over the last couple of days without the worries of wondering whether or not we'd make it to the next round of the playoffs. So all that's behind us. We are into the divisional round. So my day is going pretty good. How is your day going is the better question. Always important. Always important to ask that question. Podcast 1919, welcome. I just got surprised with tickets. I'll be at Sunday's game. Podcast 19. You're down in Arizona, aren't you? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you're from a ways away. So you're making the whole trip up to Wisconsin. And if I am right, that's some awesome dedication. I'm going to jump down a couple to my brother-in-law, Andrew, chiming in. He's a Vikings fan, and I'll give the Vikings some love on this episode, on this particular Q&A tonight, mainly because they deserve it. They went into New Orleans. No one thought that they would win that game, but Dalvin Cook showed up. Kirk Cousins kind of showed up. He made some pretty big throws towards the end of that game. Same with Adam Thielen. He showed up late in that game. Made that great catch in overtime. You guys knocked off the Saints. That means that we have the Seattle Seahawks coming to town, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I'd be even more okay if Minnesota can just play one more great week of football and head over to San Francisco and get themselves a victory over there in San Francisco, so we can possibly line up back-to-back home games. I would love to have a home game in the NFC Championship. That'd be absolutely awesome. So kudos to the Vikings. This is a Packers podcast, but they played a great game. I'm not upset with them. I will definitely be cheering against them when we meet up here in a couple of weeks, if we meet up in a couple of weeks. Kyle's chiming in, I wasn't going to have a beer tonight, but maybe I should now. You should definitely grab yourself a beer. This is always more fun when you're drunk, and at least that's what I tell my wife, is that the more you drink, the better it gets. And I can't be the only one up here just drinking away. So if you are chiming in with a beverage of choice tonight, let me know what it is. It's probably beer. It's the easiest thing that you could possibly make yourself and pour into a glass and enjoy yourself a good time. Melanie chiming in. Go Pack, go. Hi, how are you doing tonight? I'm doing well, Melanie. I am doing great tonight. King Smooth checking in. Nice to see you actually attend one of these live Q&As. You've been pretty consistent the last couple of weeks, so that's pretty sweet as well. I know that you were missing them and commenting afterwards that you missed it. It's always great to have a supporting cast here. The Smiths are gonna eat. I agree with you. I'm just kind of starting to do some of my research as far as the matchup. I do want to be a little bit more proactive. I'm not sure if I'm going to post the video on late Thursday night or still early Friday morning, but I will guarantee you that the video will post before the weekend, and it's going to be one hell of a matchup. I love the Seattle and the Green Bay Packers matchup. There's so much history there. I think that this is a team that we stack up really well against. Maybe we'll get into more of those details throughout this video. But when you just think back to the 2014 NFC Championship game, you think about when Seattle has visited Green Bay, how dominant Green Bay has been over Seattle. Maybe not so much. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of playoff games between Seattle and Green Bay, but you look at the past history in the regular season, Green Bay has played very well against Seattle at home. And you just talk about, if you want to go, what was it, 2003? I think is when Matt Hasselbeck said, we want the ball and we're going to score, we're going to win, something like that. And then Al Harris came down the sideline with a pick six in overtime, game over. Love the history between this matchup. A lot of fun. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf. I mean, it's good football. It's going to be a lot of fun. Javion Clowney and the Smiths. These teams are just, it's playoff football. It's playoff football, and I love every minute of it. You better be giving Viking Nation some love. Yeah. I touched upon it. We're going to move on, though. I'm not going to give Viking Nation love the entire video. Why not be biased? Best podcast on YouTube. Thanks, Andrew. Scott, this team has been tested. What team has walked through the playoffs? I can't think of any team. You're absolutely right. If we look at the scores and the weekend of playoff football that took place as far as wild card weekend, these games are all one-score games. And that's one thing you can't take away from the playoffs, and it's really hard to predict. I actually got asked at work today by a coworker. I was going to say subordinate, but I didn't want to put him down by any means. By a coworker, I got asked, if I wasn't a Packers fan, would I think that the Packers stack up or are the better team heading into Sunday? And originally I said, yeah, of course. But when I actually thought about it, if I was not a Packer fan, I would not think that the Packers stack up well against Seattle, because the rest of the NFL does not believe that the Packers deserve to be a number 2 seed or have a first-round bye or be in the position that they are. They think they are the most overrated 13-3 team in the NFL. So that's what you have to think of if you're not a Packers fan. But if you are someone who has been following this channel or just following the team, or someone like myself who has been really invested this season more than any other season in the past, I think that the Packers stack up extremely well. I think our defense has come into a playing habit, or they've been playing really well the last couple weeks, the last 5 weeks of the season. They're coming off of some rest. Look at Aaron Jones off of his 1,000-yard rushing season. I mean, the only sticking point is that Rodgers hasn't looked like Rodgers, and I'm sick of even talking about it, and so is Aaron Rodgers, so is Matt LaFleur. I think the playoffs are all around, and Rodgers starts playing better. I think everyone starts to elevate their game. And the beautiful thing about this entire thing, if we don't touch upon the Vikings just a little bit more right now, is that Minnesota and San Francisco, they tee off on Saturday afternoon at 3:35 Central Standard Time. And if Minnesota comes away with that victory, if you don't think that's going to just even elevate Green Bay's motivation more, you have another thing coming, because to know that your division rival is locked themselves into the NFC Championship game, and you can go out there, take care of business, and host the Minnesota Vikings at home for a trip to the Super Bowl, I think this works out really well for Green Bay. Now, don't get me wrong, if Minnesota loses and San Francisco wins, Green Bay's still going to be just as hungry, but I think if Minnesota can pull off another upset in the divisional round, that is going to just light that fire. And what a matchup that would be. I mean, yes, we did sweep the Vikings throughout the regular season. We held Kirk Cousins to his 2 lowest quarterback rating performances of the season. But Dalvin Cook was missing in Week 16, and there might have been a little bit of a different flavor to that game if Dalvin Cook was healthy and playing the way he was. So, like I said, no team walks through the playoffs. These are all one-score matchups on Saturday and Sunday. You look at the Houston and the Bills game that went into overtime. Houston won with a game-winning field goal, mainly because Buffalo just had some horrible play calling, not only to end that game, but then Josh Allen, young, inexperienced, made some very rookie mistakes. His little lateral pass, which didn't end up costing him any significant yards or the game, but just mental errors like that really hurt Buffalo. That was a 3-point game overtime. Tennessee upsets New England. Not a lot of people saw that coming. Some people did. People thought it was kind of the end of the Tom Brady era before that game started. But nonetheless, 13-20. And it was only 13-20 because Tom Brady threw a pick six very late on in that game. And that's the only reason that game wasn't any closer than 13-20. Minnesota, New Orleans obviously went into overtime. We'll probably talk about whether or not that was pass interference or not. I definitely want to touch upon that at some point tonight. So if I forget, if this drags into 9:30 and 9:40 and I haven't talked about it, definitely something that I do want to touch upon before we wrap up the video. And then, of course, probably the most boring game of the entire evening or the weekend was that Seattle versus Philadelphia game. When Wentz went out, it just kind of seemed like you just knew Seattle would eventually just run away with it. And although they didn't run away with it, Philadelphia had plenty of opportunities throughout that game to win. But Josh McCown just couldn't do it. He wanted to do it. He just couldn't do it. They've struggled in the red zone throughout the entire day. They couldn't punch it in the end zone whatsoever. So Seattle comes away with that victory. A lot of fun. Like I said, probably the best part about Wild Card Weekend was just knowing that regardless of any of the outcomes, you're going to get some very competitive football, which we got And either way, Green Bay would be playing next week, and now that's this week. And cheers to that. Cheers to that. Podcast is pretty excited about going to the game. He's leaving Saturday after work at 6 p.m., be at the game Sunday, and red-eye home for work Monday. That is awesome. Lambeau Field is going to be hopping for sure. It's not even it's not supposed to be that cold. I mean, maybe cold by Arizona standards, but I'd love it to be a lot more colder for a game in Green Bay. If I look at the forecast right now, they are saying that it is supposed to be, I mean, it's supposed to be 42 on Thursday, but Sunday they're saying 27 for a high, 22 for a low, which means it'll probably be somewhere around 25 degrees at kickoff. Would love it to be much colder, and it's probably not. I don't know what the temperatures were out in Philadelphia, but I imagine it's going to be a very similar climate to what Seattle played in last week. There you go. That was my next question, actually. What will the weather temps and field factor into the game? Like I said, I think I just answered that for you. I don't think it's going to factor into the game a whole lot. I think just the aspect of Seattle being on the road. They've had a pretty good home record this season. They've actually performed better on the road this season than they have at home. I think that's your bigger factor. I don't think it's going to be ultimately too freezing for Russell Wilson not to go out there and not to perform the way he has. It's Mook says Russell Wilson struggles in Green Bay, hasn't won in Wisconsin since college, and has twice the interceptions and touchdowns there. Yeah, a lot of stats going around Facebook right now as far as Russell Wilson's stats. He has an 0-3 record in Green Bay, a 57.3% completion percentage, 201.3 pass yards per game, 3 total pass touchdowns in 3 games, and 6 interceptions in 3 games. So Russell Wilson's career at Lambeau Field is not the greatest statistically, but at the end of the day, it's playoff football, and he could show up and just be on fire, and the Packers have to be very mindful of that. Hopefully, I wish that maybe one day I could be fortunate enough to grow to the exposure and level of a Packers, I guess, news guy. I would love to have been interviewing Matt LaFleur. I'd love to ask him if looking at the upset of the Titans over New England and looking at the upset of Minnesota and the Saints, if he incorporates that into any of his talks throughout the week, if he incorporates it into his speeches or his mindset that he wants to instill in these players, regardless of who we played, if there's a little bit of worry is that the Packers pretty much thought that they were going to be playing the Saints. And now, is it a little bit easier now that Seattle's coming to town? And do people maybe get a little bit more relaxed? I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not entirely of that mindset. But it's definitely something that has to factor into it. I'm curious if LaFleur preaches that message or if he just kind of blows that whole thing off to the side, doesn't worry about it, and gets his players focused in a different matter. But these interviews that they do with LaFleur every day after practice, I swear to God, they're running out of questions to ask the guy, and he just seems more and more annoyed as the season goes on. Bobby Swagger as well. The Packers and Seahawks are going to be one great game on Sunday night. Absolutely. Big B, what's up, Big B? My stats guy just showed up, so now if I get anything wrong, he will tell you. He will comment down there in the comment section and definitely point it out to everyone. He will point it out, and he will not let up. Not at all. Andrew says, it seems like these older quarterbacks are showing their age as of late. Breeze, Brady, could this be a foreshadowing of Rodgers? You would hope to God that it would be a foreshadowing of Rodgers if you're a Viking fan, because he has had your number for years, for a decade. I texted a coworker of mine, not a subordinate, so we've gone full circle as far as my conversation about coworkers. You guys will realize that I spend a lot of time at work when I'm not doing this. Anyway, his partner is a huge Patriots fan, and they lost. He was super happy that the Patriots lost because my coworker is a huge Packers fan, and I just had to comment that it's a new decade. It's the end of the dynasty. The winds have changed, have definitely started to take a hold of the NFL, and you look at the AFC. Chris Collinsworth brought this up on Sunday Night Football. You don't have Roethlisberger. You don't have, obviously, Peyton Manning. You don't have Eli Manning. You don't have Brady. You don't have some of these big-name quarterbacks that used to be the representing forces of each of their conferences and divisions. And it's the winds of change. Lamar Jackson is just coming into his own so very hard in his second season. Patrick Mahomes has kind of flown under the radar ever since his injury, but Kansas City looks great. But you even have guys like, who do we have? You look at, what's his name? Deshaun Watson. You have a guy like Deshaun Watson who played very well in college football for Clemson. He's coming in and had a great performance in the wild card. And then you look at the NFC. Maybe it would have been Wentz if he would have stayed healthy, but this is really the only conference where you have some of these a little bit older quarterbacks. You have Russell Wilson, who I consider a veteran quarterback. You have Drew Brees, and then you have Kirk Cousins, who got his very first playoff win on Saturday. And we'll see if he can back that up with another one this upcoming Saturday. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, the winds of change are definitely taking hold. It's going to be a brand new decade. We're going to probably have Rodgers for the better half of the decade, and then it'll be really interesting to kind of see how this team unfolds and prepares itself and what it molds into and shapes into. I will guarantee you the 2030 Packers are going to be a very different looking team than the 2020 Packers. I can bet my bottom dollar on it. And you look back to our 2010, 2011 Super Bowl team, you had Rodgers, you had Crosby, and you had, was it Tramon Williams? Is that who we had on the team back then? I don't know if we had Tramon Williams. It was someone. It might have been Tramon Williams. I thought it was a lineman, though. I could be very wrong on that one. Bulaga. I think it was Bulaga. The team's completely changed just in 10 years, and expect another thing 10 years from now. So what else we got out there? Big B will fact check me on that one, won't you, Big B? Deshaun Watson with the play of the playoffs so far. That was absolutely incredible. His spin away from that sack to make that throw, and then for the receiver to pick up, what do you pick up, like 20 yards after the catch? Yeah, Buffalo absolutely just self-destructed in the second half. Alexander just got here. Good evening to you, Alexander. I think I missed you last Monday, so thanks again for tuning in and checking out the show tonight, or the Q&A, and being a part of it tonight. Podcast, I'm from Wisconsin originally. LOL, cold ain't nothing. Alexander wants to go on to say the past is not nor is related to Sunday. It's like rolling dice. Each individual roll is unrelated to the previous. This is a woo kind of thought process. And Alexander is a very deep thinker. And I love that insight that you bring to our comment section 100%. Yeah, the past does not reflect anything. And we're going to keep that in mind if we play the Minnesota in the NFC Championship game. The past will not indicate the outcome of that game either. There's a lot of things you can take away from it. Like how shitty Minnesota's offensive line is, but outside of that, you can't really put too much attention to the past, at least in the way past. Junior, Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, who do you think will have a better game since Jamal has good games in bad weather? I got to put my money on Aaron Jones. It's been Aaron Jones' season so far. 1,000 yards rushing, 16 rushing touchdowns, another 470-some yards in receiving, another 3 touchdowns in receiving. We haven't even really touched Aaron Jones as far as a receiving option for a couple weeks now. So if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm playing around in the back of my head with trying to get Aaron Jones more acclimated or back into the rotation as far as a receiver. Obviously, you're going to have Adams. Obviously, you're going to have Lazard. The flu bug has hit Green Bay really hard this week, so you're seeing some players sit out. I think Lazard sat out today's practice mainly for illness reasons, but I would love to see Aaron Jones get incorporated into that passing game. I think Aaron Jones is your rock, and I think Aaron Jones is going to have a field day against the Seattle Seahawks. We got really lucky because, yes, it would have been nice to play Josh McCown and have him come into Lambeau and probably just not perform to or he probably would perform to exactly how you think he would perform. But the Eagles ranked number 3 in run defense, and that would have been a problem because that's a big sticking force for our offense. We're fortunate now to face the Seattle Seahawks, who are ranked 22nd in the league at stopping the run. And I couldn't help but watching that game yesterday. I was texting some friends, and I thought that we would struggle against Zach Ertz on a daily and just throughout the entire game if we had to face him as a tight end. And Seattle struggles against the run, so I was definitely favoring and hoping that we would play Seattle in that matchup, even though you don't have Carson Wentz in there. I think that Green Bay matches up really well against Seattle. They should be able to run the ball. They should be able to get some passing yards throughout the game, and then their defense should be able to get to Russell Wilson and create a whole bunch of chaos. I think DK Metcalf had a great game, but like you see from most rookie receivers, they kind of do this sine wave, and that one's for you, Alexander. I'm throwing out my sine waves out here on the broadcast, a little bit of science lessons for you. So you had an up game. I predict that DK Metcalf will have a down game. I don't think that, he's had a great season, but I have a hard time seeing him continuing to peak when he visits Lambeau. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think that he's going to have quite the same performance in Green Bay. I think you're going to see a lot of too high safeties. I think you're going to have Alexander on him for the majority of the game. You might actually put Kevin King on him if you can trust him, just because Kevin King's a little bit higher or taller. He might be higher too. I don't get into that type of press readings quite so much, but to answer the original question, because I tend to go on tangents on the show, Aaron Jones will get the ball more than Jamal Williams, but I do think Jamal Williams will have a role in the game. They will definitely, probably you're looking at 70-30 as far as Aaron Jones to Jamal Williams on who's going to get the ball the most. Richard H. Kane seems like a new name. Maybe you've tuned in before. If you have before, thanks for coming back. If you haven't, thanks for checking out and being a part of this. Seattle doesn't match up well against Green Bay, especially if Green Bay bring their A game. Yeah, I love how, I don't know if it's subconscious, if I'm reading some of your guys' questions out of the corner of my eye, but I agree with you 100%. I think I just beat that one like a dead horse, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Tua Van, yes, finally made it. Go Packers. I assume you're saying you made it to the live Q&A, so yeah, here you are. Congratulations. Cheers to being here. And if you have some more questions, or if you have some input or questions, go ahead and ask. Alexander says, Rodgers is fine. People judge quarterback and fail to look at finer points, i.e. route running, new complex systems, it's mental stress. Next year, familiarity will feature explosiveness. Green Bay happened to win 13. Yeah, I don't think you stumble across 13 by happenstance at any point in the NFL. I do think that this Green Bay team will be a better rounded and an all-around better team next year. But at this point, we have 2 wins to go before the Super Bowl. We have found ways to win games. I assume a lot of you, or some of you, or most of you checked out my Sunday conversation video that posted yesterday. It's a little bit of a tangent. I was very sleep deprived, so I apologize if the quality quite wasn't up to snuff. But they have managed to win with leads. They've managed to win from behind. They've managed to win some just crap games where they didn't play well, and they managed to win games where everything clicks. So this team has found out how to win, and I don't doubt that they're going to be able to duplicate that as we head into the playoffs. I think that they've taken a lot of experience out of that. Yes, you'd like to see consistency, but 13 wins just doesn't happen, and they managed to find themselves 13-3 with a first-round bye. So Williams and Bulaga, Crosby, and Rodgers. Yeah, so we had 4 guys on that Super Bowl team back in 2010-2011 season. Thanks, Big B, for fact-checking. You absolutely rock. I'll give a co-shout-out to Alexander. I'd love to take Dorian Robinson, Thomas as Rodgers' successors. He learned a lot from Rodgers. I'm not ready to talk about successors to Rodgers quite yet. I think it's a little bit too early in his career. I think you look at, I see Rodgers, he signed through the 2023 season. I think that he plays at least through the 2025-2026 season for the Green Bay Packers, and I don't think that you draft someone as a successor that you're going to ride on the bench for 5-6 years. It just doesn't happen. I don't think it works out. I think it's cool to draft and maybe you can use it as trade equity, but it didn't really work out with Brett Hundley. Didn't really work out with Deshaun Kaiser. So I think you just kind of stick with Tim Boyle. You ride that wave. He could be the Doug Peterson to Brett Favre. He could be the Matt Flynn to Aaron Rodgers in his early career. I think that's the route to go. I'm not of the mindset that we need to be drafting quarterbacks. We need to maybe draft a wide receiver, which, by the way, in case you missed it in the news, there's a lot of hype and hyperbole. I don't think that's the right word by any means, but I wanted to say that word for some reason. But the guy by the name of Reggie Beagleton, I think it's Beagleton. That sounds a little bit better. So this guy from the CFL was signed by the Packers. It was kind of a big deal when he decided and was released by his team so he could pursue the NFL. This is a wide receiver from the Canadian Football League. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. and he will be part of the Packers 90-man roster when the season ends. He is the all-time leading receiver at Lamar University. He caught 102 passes for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns this last year in Canadian football. He finished second in the league in receptions and third in receiving yards and touchdowns. He seems to be a pretty solid weapon. I like his. I kind of looked up his Twitter a little bit. I love the humility behind this guy. I think he's going to be. He's going to come to Green Bay. He's going to be a hard worker. You don't really know what you get out of these types of players, but he obviously has a little bit more experience than what you'd see from a player that comes fresh out of college. He's going to be competing, and he's going to have an opportunity. I think Green Bay is really going to be looking at revamping their wide receiving core as the next season rolls around. They're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we have to remember that St. Brown was placed on season-long IR, so he's going to be a player that's going to come back into the fold. You're going to have this Begelton guy that comes back that's going to be introduced into the fold. I imagine that they will go out and either sign or draft someone. We got to find someone counter Devontae Adams that can be equally as deadly of a threat. And Lazard has done solid. He's performed admirably as the number 2 wide receiver, but I don't think he is a long-term number 2 wide receiver by any stretch. So it's going to be pretty cool to see what he can do. There's a lot of hype around him. I think he tried out for 7 different teams, and Green Bay was fortunate to be one of the teams that actually signed him. I don't know if the other 6 teams just didn't think he was any good, or if he wanted to come to Green Bay and play for Aaron Rodgers, but I think that's what I would want to do if I was entering the NFL and I wanted a shot on an NFL team, was to play with one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in the league. So yeah, I'm not really sure how we got on that topic, but I just wanted to bring that up. That was a little bit of breaking news. We could also talk about Mike McCarthy making his way to Dallas. Really interesting. Green Bay does not play Dallas whatsoever next season unless they meet up in the playoffs. I think that I'm really curious on what a Mike McCarthy offense looks like without Aaron Rodgers. I am of the mindset 100% that Aaron Rodgers carried that team through Mike McCarthy's career. I think it was Rodgers that deserves the credit and not McCarthy. I don't know if Mike McCarthy can take a Dak Prescott or the Hollywood lifestyle that is the Dallas Cowboys and mold that into a football team. One of the rumors are one of the deciding factors on why they wanted to bring McCarthy in was because they felt like he was able to defeat the Dallas Cowboys with a less talented team. So essentially they're saying that he outcoached the Dallas Cowboys whenever they met up. I don't know. I think it was Aaron Rodgers, and I think it was Jared Cook, and I think it was Dez Bryant dropping passes that really was the deciding factors in many of those games. It was even Aaron Jones this last season. But it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of see how that all pans out. I don't see it. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they pay him. I mean, he signed a 5-year contract. He's going to be 61 years old by the time his 5-year contract is up. Maybe he does really good down there in Dallas, but I just don't see him being the answer. I think they took his resume. They took a Super Bowl champion resume. They took 8 consecutive playoff years resume. They completely forgot about the last 2 years where they just did not look like themselves, or the offense just looked abysmal. They blamed it on Rodgers. Maybe he blamed it on Rodgers. He won't have. I don't think he'll have any problem coaching Dak Prescott. I think Prescott is as hungry, eager to learn. Who knows though? Dak Prescott is also looking for a contract extension. He wants to get paid at like $2.7 trillion to be the quarterback in Dallas for 3 years. And I'm not entirely sure if his ego is going to get in the way of everything else. It's a shit show. Quite frankly, it's a shit show in Dallas, and now Mike McCarthy is sent down there to try and save the day. Good luck, Mike. I wish you the best. I just don't see it. I don't see it going well for him. Cheapest tickets for the NFC Championship right now is $377 on SeatGeek. That will get the brain churning a little bit. I did not even really entertain. Well, okay, I looked up tickets just to see what they were going for, but at the end of the day, I didn't really entertain the idea of going to Lambeau for a playoff game. I really love the setup that I have for my Packer parties. I've said this countless times before. Drinks, music, shots. It's going to be a good time. I can see all the angles, and I can see the penalties before they're even called. So I'm going to be watching that one at home. But if Green Bay makes their way down to Miami, it's going to be awfully tempting just not even to just go down there and watch it in a bar in Miami and tailgate and do all that fun stuff. So Miami would be a nice place to visit the first week of February. Let's see. It's Mook. Big B. It will most likely be King with safety help and Alexander on Lockett. Where I guess that's an assumption that you're talking about how we are going to wrap up or tie up DK Metcalf. I agree with you. I think it will probably be King for the majority of the game. And Alexander and Lockett are a great matchup together. Those guys are both fast and dashy and aggressive, and I agree with you. That's probably how it's going to line up. I think King with his height is going to be faced with a very challenging day, and King's going to have one hell of a performance out there on Sunday to really shut him down. If they can shut down DK Metcalf, DK Metcalf and Lockett are your two wide receivers. There's not really a whole lot else going on in that passing game. At running back, you have Marshawn Lynch that comes in off the bench, but their running game is suffering. Their offensive line does a little bit of a struggle. They struggle as far as protecting Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson's mobile enough where he can kind of get himself out of some jams, but I really like our defensive matchups against the Seattle Seahawks. And then as far as just the Packers offense against Seattle, yeah, they're a great team. They're a great defensive team. And I can't even say his name. Jadeveon Clowney had one hell of a monster performance yesterday against the Eagles, but can lightning strike twice in the bottle for him as well. He's had mainly a mediocre season. He kind of came out of his shell in the playoffs. He's got to put back-to-back games together. And when we talk about Seattle and really what they've had to go through the last couple weeks, they come off of that upset against Arizona, which was a hard-fought game that they came up with the L. They obviously didn't want to lose that. They gave everything they could so they would hold on to that game, but it came up with a loss. They then get to go home, face off against San Francisco. San Francisco, obviously, that game comes down to a 2-inch difference between a touchdown and not a touchdown. So Seattle gave it everything that week, and then they go out to Philadelphia and they play in a playoff football game. I think Seattle. You look at these. Think of the regular season when you have back-to-back tough games against opponents. It starts to wear down on you. I think that's gonna. Whether it's Minnesota or Seattle, if either of these two teams end up making a run at the Super Bowl, it's going to catch up to them at some point. And that's why it's such a huge advantage to have that week off and that bye and kind of rejuvenate. And I think the Packers handled it right as far as how they didn't give the guys the complete week off. They were around and lifting weights, and they had some short practices. But I think that it's going to catch up to Seattle, especially with the travel. They had to go all the way out to Philadelphia. So we're West Coast to East Coast, and then now they have to go from Seattle to Lambeau. A lot of traveling to do. Dorian, will Packers be able to stop the Seahawks run game? I do think the Packers will be just fine against the Seahawks run game. Marshawn Lynch hasn't played like himself for years. It was a head-scratching moment when the Seattle Seahawks picked him up. Now, they lost their 3 running backs, so they really didn't have a whole lot of options. I think it was smart for them to go out and get Marshawn Lynch because what it does to that fan base, what it does to that locker room, you can't put a price tag on it, quite frankly, and he's really brought a lot of energy back to that team. But as far as him as a football player, he had a great touchdown with the lunge on Sunday against the Eagles, but he's a third down back for the most part. He's not all that big of a dual threat. The guy was out for pretty much the entire season, and he wasn't playing that good when he was over in Oakland either. So I'm not too worried about Marshawn Lynch. The name's escaping me on who they have as that other running back, but I think the Packers will be fine. They don't need to be a top 10 run defense on Sunday to come away with a victory. They have to do a bunch of other things to come away with a victory on that defensive side of the ball. And it's going to be putting pressure on Russell Wilson, and it's going to be shutting down DK Metcalf. Those are your 2 biggest things that they have to focus on. What else we got? You guys have a bunch of conversations. Alexander's still on board with Jordy. He did say that if Aaron called, he couldn't say no. 34, his hands and route running. Jordy's not coming back. I gave up on Jordy once they had the retirement speech in Green Bay. I would love to have Jordy Nelson still on the team. I wish it was just a phone call away. But it's over. You got to close the door, close the book. Chapter written, sealed, signed, delivered. It'd be awesome to see White Chocolate once again. Sideline Houdini, tiptoe dragon on the sideline. I would love to see that, but it's just not going to happen. Donald Trump's here. Hello, sir. Are you prepared for the military draft No, I'm not. Not whatsoever. And I don't think we're going to World War III. We're not going to get into politics right now. But Donald, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're a Packers fan. I'm not surprised you're a Packers fan because God loves the Green Bay Packers. I wish the best for Mac. 13 years, 9 playoffs, 1 Super Bowl, and several collapses. I'm blanking on who's Mac? Big Mac? Charlie Mac? You're gonna have to tell me who Mac is because all I can think is Khalil Mack. I know he hasn't been in the league for 13 years. Are we talking about McCarthy? It's got to be McCarthy. It came full circle. I wish the best for McCarthy. Yeah, I do too. I just don't think it's gonna go well. Good luck, McCarthy. It's not gonna go well. Hey, Mook, calm down. It came to me, all right? Jesus. Would you have drafted Metcalf over Gary? I think I would have. I was screaming at my TV that night to draft Metcalf, and it didn't do any good. I would not have drafted him over Gary. I think Metcalf that high in the draft would have been, and we've had this conversation before. This is definitely where Big B comes in, if he's still hanging around the chat session. But I think they would have had to take him with their second first-round pick, which in this case would have been Darnell Savage. I love Darnell Savage. I have his jersey somewhere around here. I don't think you would have done that. I don't think you took him at where the Packers took Gary at. I think that would have been way too high. So to answer your question, I wouldn't have. I think a late first round, early second round was kind of the prime spot for him, and I was just surprised. I was sitting there watching that draft that night, and then it bled into the next night, and I'm like, why isn't anybody drafting him? He is going to be a solid force to be reckoned with. Obviously, he had some controversy coming out of colleges and some concerns, off-field concerns, but he has proven to be an absolute force for a rookie season. And the guy is a brick shit house to the fullest extent. I mean, you look up brick shit house in the dictionary, and it will say see DK Metcalf, and you'll go to see DK Metcalf, and it will have like synonyms, and it'll be like The Rock will be on there, and you're going to see like Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you're going to see the Mountain from Game of Thrones. The guy is just ripped. I think they said, like, last night they were saying that the guy, he started lifting weights when he was 5 and he was bench pressing like 100 pounds or something crazy. Yeah, it shows. It shows, guys. Steroids. One hell of a drug. I don't think he's on steroids, but the guy's ripped. Catherick, how you doing tonight? Would you have drafted... Oh, yeah, that was your question. It's Mook. Metcalf was a third-round grade. They could have waited, which is what Seattle did. K. Dean, how do you feel about Cowboys signing McCarthy? I touched base on that, K. Dean, so I'm not going to overshadow your question. Once this thing stops recording, feel free to go back. Probably about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the video. I think I touched upon McCarthy, and you can catch up on some of that stuff. Are we rooting for the Vikings this weekend? Really hurts to do so, LOL. I agree with you. It does hurt to root for the Vikings, and I'm sure my brother-in-law, who is a Vikings fan, is long gone by this point, because really any Vikings fan worth his weight in gold can't stick around for more than 15 minutes before just giving up on everything if it's not going their way. So I think what I'm trying to say is, yes, we are rooting for the Vikings. I personally am rooting for the Vikings. I think with just the opportunity, if it would have been Seattle out there in San Francisco, if it would have been Philadelphia out there in San Francisco, regardless, I don't want to go to California again. Can the Packers win in California? Maybe. It's tough to say. They were 0-2, and their two worst games of the season happened in California. One after a bye week, one when they were just rolling as far as their performances this season. I think it was shortly after. Here, I don't need your fact checking, baby. I'll look this up myself. It was coming off of the Chiefs game. So they wrapped up the Sunday Night Football game against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and then they went out to face San Diego and just laid a stinker of a game. I don't want to go back to California. If it happens to go that way, we'll explore those options then. But yes, I would love for the Vikings to win. I'd love for that matchup. I mean, we look at the remaining 4 teams in the NFC. You have the top 2 teams in the NFC West, and you have the top 2 teams in the NFC North. These conferences have been playing very well. And you look at Who finished third in both of these conferences? In the NFC West, you had the LA Rams. In the NFC North, you had the Chicago Bears. These two teams were the winners of the division last year. So these two conferences are a lot of fun to watch, and it could be a little bit of a cyclical thing that happens in this conference. Of course, we're going to be hoping that Green Bay can win the division year after year, and they might do so with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers continuing to improve their relationship. But we're looking at the second best NFC North team facing the number one NFC West. You guys get how the whole thing shakes out. It's pretty cool just to see that these two conferences are the remaining Final Four of the NFC, and just to have an NFC North championship. Like when Green Bay went to the Super Bowl last time, they played Chicago at Chicago in the NFC Championship game. And it was just really cool to represent the NFC North that way and all the talent that comes with that conference. And a lot of people look past it. They see the Detroit Lions and how they struggle year in and year out, and they almost think that there isn't a whole lot of winning that goes on here. But pretty cool. Definitely very cool. Mac is McCarthy. Thanks, everyone, for clearing that up for me. When I have brain farts, it apparently it frustrates you guys, so I will do better. I will be better, and we will continue down this road. They still believe in MVS a little too much at the time of the draft. I believed in MVS up until, week 6. Same with Geronimo Allison. I was extremely confident. If you guys want to have yourself a good time, too, check out some of my early videos. I started this podcast in April of 2019. We are quickly coming up on my 1-year anniversary, which is just crazy. It's gone by so fast. But I was convicted that the Packers would be fine at wide receiver. I loved what we had in Allison and MVS, and then Kumaro making the roster, and St. Brown. And then when training camp rolled around, we had Lazard making plays. You had Shepard. You guys remember Darius Shepard? He was making plays too. It's pretty crazy that they've struggled as much with wide receivers as they have, and I think you see the confidence level's gone down on a lot of these guys, and Rodgers, I think, is a little bit uncomfortable with throwing and playing with some of these guys. I was convicted that our wide receiving group was set, but I've been proven wrong, and I will be proven wrong many more times throughout the course of this channel's life cycle. So that's that. Brandon Godden, biggest worry for Sunday night. Let's see here. My biggest worry for Sunday night is just I don't want them to come out flat. I think back to that San Francisco game, and that one still leaves just a sour taste in my mouth. We had a lot going for us. We had 2 losses on the season. We were playing for first place in the NFC, sole possession. I mean, we would have been tied, but we would have owned the tiebreaker over San Francisco. Everybody was healthy coming into that game. We were a week rested, and we just laid one hell of an egg and couldn't get anything going that game. So if there's any kind of, I guess, concerns or biggest worries for the game on Sunday, it's just that Green Bay doesn't show up. They will show up eventually, but they come off to a slow start, or they get down early and kind of start being their own worst enemy, and that's probably my biggest worry. If I had to pick a close second, though, it's just the inexperience of Matt LaFleur. Now, I'm a huge Matt LaFleur fan. I think that he is going to have a bright future in Green Bay. I've said this before, but there needs to be more attention placed on the importance of coaching when it comes to playoff football. And I can't think of another sport where coaching is more important than it is in the game of football. I look at baseball. I think managers in baseball are completely useless for 99% of the time. They switch out pitchers and control their depth chart and whatnot. Hockey, same thing. They useless. What else we got? Basketball. Yeah, let's sit this guy because he has 4 fouls in the third quarter. Useless. I think when it comes to actual in-game coaching, it's so important to have someone that you trust as far as when it comes to play calling and whatnot. And we've seen this time and time again. It's going to be up to Matt LaFleur to know when to go for it on 4th down, when they should maybe just take a field goal, when to throw a challenge flag. there's going to be a lot of decisions throughout that game, and that's probably my secondary worry is he ready for this type of game? Is he prepared? I think for the most part he is, but he's having one hell of a rookie season. He's had a lot thrown at him to be 13-3 and thrown into the playoffs for the first year as a head coach. It's hopefully he brings his A game. He's gonna. The guy's completely focused. He's a leader. He's prepared. But that would probably be my second biggest worry. Who should we have cover Metcalf? We talked about that. I think we are all in agreement that Kevin King should be the guy that covers up Metcalf throughout that game. Would you like to see? Would you like something from Lambeau for the Packer cave, sir? Dude, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. I do need to get rid of this godforsaken canvas though at some point, and I'm not really sure. I think when the season wraps up and I start to maybe take a little sabbatical from the YouTube channel, we got to do like a little bit of a Q&A as far as how should I improve this channel and what should I get going in the background. Maybe I should just get like a 65-inch TV that just like has me talking like or shaving in the mirror or something like that. That just plays like just something to distract you from all the rest of the nonsense that goes on. Or it could just be we could just State Farm commercials nonstop in the background. That would be not at all a good idea. I think that's a terrible idea. You don't have to get me anything. I mean, if you wanted to, you can obviously see and what I got going on here. Season 2 is just around the corner. It's just around the corner. Season 2 is around the corner. Let's get through Season 1 first. Big B, I'm so hyped to go to the playoff game. So Big B and Podcast 1919, you guys have to hook up at some point. You do that for Pour Another. I gotta get you guys some Pour Another merchandise and memorabilia so you can wear that and represent out there in Lambeau Field. That's what I gotta do. I gotta get you guys something. I gotta get you some swag so you can represent out there at Lambeau Field. If we don't run a trick play on Sunday, I'm going to slap somebody. Brandon, great point. What are we going to see? And that goes back to the Matt LaFleur coaching side, right? You got challenges. You're going to go for it on 4th down. You're going to kick a field goal. You're going to punt it. Or are you going to run yourself a trick play? We've seen a lot of trick plays throughout this preseason, or this playoff, just wild card weekend, excuse me. Throughout the wild card weekend, we saw some trick plays. Some of them have backfired. Minnesota had one that backfired pretty hard for them yesterday as far as Stephon Diggs trying to play quarterback and just got completely lit up in the backfield. Some of them have panned out, and I think those are the bold moves and decisions that win playoff games, but those are also ones that can completely kill a drive. I think that New England did it right in their game on Saturday night. Now, New England lost, so maybe they didn't do it right, but they ran their trick play very early on in their game. I think I don't remember what it was. I just know it was a trick play. It's probably about halfway through the first quarter. It failed miserably, but it was okay because there was still a lot of football left in that game. I would love to see a trick play. I'm not really sure what a Green Bay trick play entails, but it seems to be very popular. I don't see Aaron Rodgers running down the sideline catching any passes. I think that'd be foolish for a multitude of reasons. I think Rodgers could do it, but what kind of trick plays do you have in mind? Are we talking like fake punts, fake field goals? We haven't seen a ton of fake field goals. We see a lot of fake punts. I think we should do either a fake field goal or we should go off with like a surprise onside kick just to start the game. There's no risk involved on that one, right? If you're kicking off to start the game, just do an onside kick. Let's see what happens. Roll the dice. That's my vote. Alexander says, losing to San Francisco, outcoached and not prepared, or just bad matchup. Hopefully it was just an off night with wrong buy approach. I go back to that San Francisco game, and there's a lot of history between LaFleur and the 3 coaches that are part of the San Francisco 49ers, and they made a point of it very early on in the game. I don't know why to say vehicle or video. But you had Shanahan, you had LaFleur's brother, and then you had, I think it's the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. These guys have all kind of played together and coached together throughout their lives, and you had 3 against 1, and you just had little old Matt LaFleur and his ragtag Green Bay Packer team coming on the road to face off against the powerhouse San Francisco 49ers that week. It was kind of comical to a point. I mean, if you don't think you have 3 minds that definitely want to win that game teamed up against 1, there could be an element of Matt LaFleur getting out-coached in that game. I think talent-wise, I don't think it's talent-wise. I think Packers have the talent. Obviously, to go 13-3, they have the talent. I think they just played flat. I think they were a little bit overwhelmed with the moment. They couldn't really get a whole lot of things going in their own favor throughout that game. They were again their own worst enemy for that matchup. So if they make a trip back out to California again, they definitely can't do any of that, and they have to avoid all those mistakes. Big B, you were very confident with the wide receiver. I was extremely confident with wide receivers. You have to be foolishly confident at some times throughout these podcasts. One thing I've learned, and I try to stay grounded in reality, and I have firm beliefs that I definitely want to share with you. But one thing that I think people love more than anything is when you have a personality that you watch and they just seem so convicted in what they believe. I have a few convictions that I'm sure will come out through. I can't think of anything right now, but you listen to Colin Cowherd. Guy's been on radio for years. He says some of the dumbest shit that comes out of anybody's mouth, but it gets a conversation going and people share it. And this is what Colin Cowherd said. Or you hear Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless or Shannon Sharp, whoever you want to talk about. I want to take more of the NFL Network approach with Kyle Brandt and Peter Schrager. Those guys are not only entertaining, fun, and factual, but they actually they don't say stupid things outlandishly. They kind of play. They know that the NFL is the NFL, and any given Sunday, that's more of the approach that I want to take. But I was convicted on those wide receivers. I thought that we would be fine, and who knows? Playoffs are right around the corner. I was convicted with Jimmy Graham if we want to get down that road. I drafted Jimmy Graham in my fantasy football, and every time I started him, he had a terrible game, and I sat him out 3 times this season, and he went off for 2 touchdowns and 1,000 yards receiving. It was absolutely crazy. That didn't happen. Thought it happened. It didn't happen. Catherick says, is it just me, or is it true that whenever Gmo gets the ball, he seems to fumble? I haven't picked up on that one. Maybe it's just you. I haven't seen that one. It'd be really... I could dive into it if you want to. I don't think that he's known to be a fumbler. I think that he's just... no, I don't think so. Maybe it's just you. I'll say it's just you on that one. Bucks got their butts kicked. I am sad. I did not see the Milwaukee. They're fine. They'll make the playoffs. Playoff basketball, they'll figure it out. They have the NFC East pretty much under their belt right now at this point. It's hard to win every game in the NBA. You can't get too upset about losing here and there. Podcast, sir, I'd be honored to add the Man Cave. Well, thank you. I will leave it at that. If you want to, you may, but I don't feel like you have to. Andy says, why is everyone in the media writing up the Packers, basically saying Seattle is a lock to win? Am I missing something? We are better at almost every position group. Yeah, the media loves to hate on Green Bay, and this is it. I mean, we want to talk about this? Let's talk about this. Green Bay goes to Minnesota, wins the NFC North, holds Minnesota to 7 first downs, has an outstanding performance defensively. Offense, they turned over the ball 3 times in the first half, but still managed to put points up in the second half, come away at the win. They were down 10-9 at halftime, continue to dominate the rest of that game. Everybody was high on Green Bay after that Monday Night Football game against Minnesota. It was nationally televised. It was 2 days before Christmas. The whole world was watching Green Bay maybe turn a corner. Maybe they are the team to beat in the NFC. They come off of, that was Monday night. You have Christmas Eve, you have Christmas Day. You have 2 days of essentially walkthrough practices at this point. They travel to Detroit. They face off against an NFC North kind of rascal divisional opponent in the Detroit Lions, who always plays us tough, who played us tough very early on in the season in Week 5, that surprised us at Ford Field on countless times. We've had to have Hail Marys there to win games. We've had to have Mason Crosby missing 4 field goals last season. It's not a place that Green Bay really loves to go and play football. So they have a struggling game. They go down 17-3 at halftime. They have to claw and scrape their way back. They decide to throw 80,000 20-yard or more passes and just couldn't get their offense going in the second half, but they win. Mason Crosby goes down the field. He kicks a field goal at the end of regulation. They come away with a win. They get the first round bye. And we'll touch on that just in a second as far as how important that first round bye was. But because they struggled, coming off of a short week, and facing a division opponent that didn't really have a whole lot to lose. I mean, don't want to talk about trick plays. Detroit Lions use a trick play of all trick plays to score one of their 2 touchdowns in that matchup. So now the media's down on Green Bay again. Now it's like they forgot what happened in Minnesota. They're thinking about what happened in Detroit. They're thinking about Aaron Rodgers and he only threw for 4,000 yards this season, and he only had 26 touchdowns. Shut up. I mean, ignore that sounded out what we've seen, and if this is your only source for Packers content, A, thank you, but B, what I have seen is that you listen to Rodgers and Smith and LaFleur and Tremont and Jones, and you could listen to Jair all day because the guy has more cockiness and swagger than anyone else in that locker room. But this team believes in each other. This team is one. This team is talented. There's talent all over it. They are playing for more than just, themselves. They're playing for each other. You only have 4 guys, as what we've learned, thanks to Bigby and Alexander with their fact checking. And you only have 4 guys who are part of that Super Bowl team 9 years ago. This is a young team who's hungry and wants to win, has a home game against an opponent that they, I think, stack up better against. Everyone is lost in the excitement of yesterday's game and how DK Metcalf had two outstanding bomb catches, and how I struggle with that again. Jadeveon Clowney had a monster performance against the Eagles offense. This is a short-term memory NFL media that we live in, and it's completely frustrating. If Seattle had the bye week, which they came 2 yards away from having the bye week, if Seattle had the bye week, Green Bay would have had to play on wild card weekend, and they go and have Rodgers throw 30 for 36 and 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Jones runs for another 2 touchdowns, and they have just a heyday on wild card weekend. They'd all be saying right now that nobody's going to be able to stop Green Bay. They got hot at the right time. We don't know what we have out of this Packers team in the playoffs. Let me remind you, we don't know what we have, but we do know what we've seen throughout the season. It's a team that knows how to win. I am more than confident in what Green Bay can do at home on Sunday. I love the matchup. I love our ability to be able to run on a 22nd ranked run defense in the Seattle Seahawks. I think that they will be just fine. And that is why, to answer your question in a heated and passionate way, that is why they are looking past them and thinking that Seattle is going to come away with this victory, because it's short-term memory. Everyone's short-term memory when it comes to the NFL. They just came off of the high of the wild card weekend. They forgot that there is a quarterback over there in Green Bay and a running back and a team that is ready to go out there and compete. So, Andy, hopefully that answers your question. I feel good about my answer. You should feel good about my answer as well. To keep the party going, let's have a drink. I had a new subscriber. I wanted to call it out there, but if you just subscribed, thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed before, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to take a drink break. I'm going to give you guys about 5 seconds to hit that subscribe button. And we're done. Okay. So where were we? I believe the Packers will win. We play aggressive head of the Seattle. We play aggressive head on with Seahawks like we did the Vikings. Colin can go off the rails sometimes. Yeah, Colin can go off the rails sometimes. And I think that's why he has been as successful as he is. I mean, think about Howard Stern. He's a very successful radio talk host. And he got there because he went off the rails, and he said he lit the fire. It's all about lighting the fire in people and having some controversy. As much as people say they hate controversy or whatnot, we live off of it. It's absolutely it's human nature, 100%. I love that the media is doubting us. I do love that as well, Pac-Man. I think that the underdog has worked well for the Packers for many years, and I am perfectly fine with us flying under the radar. I think with a strong performance against Seattle on Sunday, let's just where's our playoff odds? I have that here. I saved some stuff. So, updated playoff betting lines: Ravens plus 200, Chiefs plus 300, 49ers plus 300, Packers coming at 4th at plus 800, and then you look at your 4 road teams: Seahawks at plus 15, Vikings at plus 1800, Titans at plus 35, and the lowly Texans, those poor sons of bitches, they are being disrespected with plus 4,000. I'm surprised the Texans are as low on that list as they are. I mean, yeah, the Titans have Derrick Henry, but I would think that if I took the Texans and the Titans, I would take the Texans over the Titans in the playoffs. But, yeah, they're not getting love. Play the underdog card. That's perfectly fine. I mean, you want to talk about ultimate diss is just the fact that Za'Darius was completely no Pro Bowl, no All-Pro. Like, guys, this guy Poor guy. He's going to make the top 100 in the offseason. I have no doubt in my mind about it. He better make the top 100. I should say that. I would have thought that he would have made the Pro Bowl or the All-Pro team, but I was wrong about that. I've definitely seen GMO lack ball security this season. So Brandon is following up with Catherick as far as ball security with GMO. I'm going to be a little bit more mindful of that as the season continues and see if there's any credence or credibility to that statement. Green Bay beat the Vikings even with Dalvin Cook. Yes, they did beat the Vikings, and that was the thing that I would take away. As much as we want to say that Green Bay, we swept the division, which is absolutely awesome. When we played the Vikings with Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins was not playing the same level of football that he was. Eventually went down that road later on the season and finished the season relatively strong. I think it was a 4.9 quarterback rating is what he finished against the Green Bay Packers in week 2. Week 16, I don't even know if it was Kirk Cousins as much. That entire offense was at that point built around what Dalvin Cook can do as far as setting up play action and setting up the passing game. Dalvin Cook is one hell of a force to be reckoned with. He's a very good running back, and Minnesota's been very fortunate, like Green Bay has been with quarterbacks over the last 2 decades. The Vikings have been very fortunate with really good running backs over the 2 decades. So I think Dalvin Cook shifts it a little bit for what a matchup would be in the NFC Championship game. But hey, one game at a time. Let's keep our attention focused at the Seahawks. GMO and MVS have been terrible. This one's by Broke Boy Industries. Why did we even sign Grant for? We signed Grant because we were looking for answers and for some depth. It takes a while to get acclimated to the offense. I didn't think when we signed Grant that it was going to be a world-changing decision. But if we really want to talk about a head-scratching moment, let's rewind the clock a little bit on when we let go of Trevor Davis. By letting go of Trevor Davis, you remember that name? You should. We struggled with our special teams, punt return and kick return, for the majority of the season. Now, Tyler Ervin has come in and he's done really well at returning the ball the last couple weeks of the season. But Trevor Davis was a great option. He had a great preseason. He was catching so many passes. He was really strong in the special teams. They thought that they could get some sort of equity because they were confident. Gutekunst, who's made outstanding decisions, and LaFleur was obviously had to coach these guys. They were confident in what they saw in the rest of that wide receiving group. Maybe that's why I was so confident and high on these wide receivers, is because they let a guy like Trevor Davis go when they probably should have hung on to him if they had any concerns. But as far as why we signed Grant, we're looking for lightning in a bottle. It took till week 5 for Lazard to make a wave, and that maybe they thought that they could probably find someone else to go along with that. The Smiths will feast against a bad Seahawks O-line. I agree with you 100%. Brook Boy, I think the Smiths are going to be rested, and I think Za'Darius, playoffs. Playoffs? Talking about playoffs? I think he's going to excel in the playoffs. I think he's going to be very hungry coming out of that tunnel at Lambeau. Andy says, love it. I assume that's part of my crazy tangent that I went on not too long ago. Brandon says, are you worried about how badly we performed the last bye week we came out of? Yes, I am. That was one of my bigger worries as far as Sunday night's matchup, was just coming out flat. I think that was your question, too. So you asked a question that I gave you an answer to, and then asked me the same question to that I answer that you should have already knew. But that's okay. Maybe you're drinking, and maybe you're just kind of hanging out and enjoying the content. I won't roast you. I won't roast you. Melanie says, I think that the Packers are a great team. They all work together, and they're a very close team with each other. They all work hard and play football games. They are a very close team, 100%. We do match up pretty well with Seattle. Sports propaganda is what Alexander says. Tennessee is underrated, says Pac-Man Jake. Yeah, Derrick Henry is one hell of a monster running back. Just watching him run all over that Patriots defense that was the number 1 defense all year. They didn't have an answer for him. Yeah, Derrick Henry. Who do they play? I get my AFC matchups a little bit confused, but luckily I came prepared. So Tennessee faces Baltimore. God, can they do it? Can Tennessee upset Baltimore? I don't know. I don't know if they can do it. It's going to be a great game. I'm going to miss most of the Vikings and San Francisco game because I'll be at work, but I'll definitely be watching that Baltimore game, and hopefully they can upset the Ravens. I love upsets. The NFL loves upsets, and I love upsets too. Last couple questions here. I mean, God, I've been talking for an hour. It's already 10:03. 17 of you guys viewers. I had a new subscriber. It's been a fun night. It's been a hot day of Packer news, or just news in the NFL. Quite frankly, and it feels like playoff year. I mean, it's definitely playoffs are here. This is what I'm trying to say. AO says, I want them to keep doubting us because that will be the victory. That will make the victory so much sweeter. I have to add words to your sentences. It makes my job a little bit harder. Smith will eat on Sunday. Irvin is amazing. Laugh my ass off. Brook Boy, 3 back-to-back comments. The last bye week we had, it was against the Cowboys. I thought the Packers played really good. We're talking about playoff bye weeks. And yeah, that would have been, 2016? 14. I had all these stats in front of me at one point. I mean, if you're throwing out stats Pac-Man, Jake, you should just tell me when the last time our playoff bye, or what year that was. I think that was that the catch? I think that was the catch, or not catch, the Des Bryant lack of catch along the sideline to end that game. I think that was the last time we had a bye week. Swervin' Irvin is what AO calls him. Andy says, 2014, the Des drop. Okay. Andy says, Kenny Clark and Z both angry and hungry. I'm having a hard time figuring out how Seattle blocks them, and that's just 2 of our D linemen. Well, when you have a pass rush like that, there's a couple things that the Seattle can do, right? So quick screens can do some damage. I really don't know. I mean, that's a Tyler Lockett sort of a thing. And then you look at screen passes as far as to your running backs. I don't know if I'm making sense anymore, but Marshawn Lynch can't catch out of the backfield. He had a out of the backfield play on Sunday against the Eagles, but he's not typically a pass catcher, screen kind of a guy, which is something that you can use when you have when your offensive line just isn't helping you a whole lot. Slant passes across the middle is the other half of that equation. And I think that would kind of factor into Green Bay's game plan. I think the biggest thing you have to do, I mean, Metcalf had 2 huge bombs down the field, and I think Green Bay is going to have to be mindful of that for the most part. But who are we kidding? I mean, guys, it's the divisional round of the playoffs. We watched the Packers 16 weeks. We've talked about this over. The Packers are going to go out there and play zone, and I'm going to be fucking yelling at my TV like I was watching The Bachelorette and he did not give the rose to the right person. What have we seen? Will history repeat itself? Will Mike Pettin put together a zone defense and put them out onto the field rather than maybe playing a little bit of man defense? Probably. But it's the type of zone defense that they play, and it's how they structure that accordingly. I'm just trying to think, what are they going to do on defense? Oh, they're going to probably just play zone. They played zone all year. They're going to stick to the zone defense, and that's probably how that's going to go. Wait, did you see us sign Reggie Bigleton? He's 6'3", 4.43. You got a lot of numbers in there. I can't decipher all that crap. Yes, I saw it. Long story short, I saw it. The Packers will not bring him into the fold this year. He will be part of the 90-man roster when the offseason comes back around and NFL teams can carry 90 guys on their roster. I think he's going to add a lot of depth to that wide receiving group. We did talk about that a little bit earlier. Pac-Man, you can't be tuning, or podcast, you can't be tuning in late. We hit the hard topics very early on in these episodes. So Melanie will be yelling at her TV too. It's 10:07. 17 of you guys are hanging out, so I appreciate that 100%. Most of you guys are here for the majority of the video. Unless you guys have any burning questions before the divisional matchup, this is last call. Last call! I gotta get I need a bell. I'm getting ideas. I don't know if they're good ideas, but I'm gonna get a bell. We're gonna say last call. Makes sense. Pour another. Final questions before we head into the Packers game. Give them away. Give it away. Give it away. Give it away now. Give it away. Give it away. And then we'll wrap up the video. I'll probably give it another 5-10 minutes here, unless it completely dies and all of you guys leave the chat room, and then I'll just sit here by myself. Kyler Fackrell is being overlooked. Watched the last 4 games of Green Bay, and he has been pressuring Corey. Yeah, Kyler Fackrell has been playing really well. Dean Lowry has been playing very well. And then Rashawn Gary has come in really well into the second half of the season. Yeah, I mean, the defense has talent. You can't argue with the amount of talent that we've had on this entire roster. Kevin King is probably the only one where you're like, what's he going to do? Is he going to have one of those great games like he had? He played really well against Minnesota. Or is he going to have one of those head scratchers where he just fucking play defense? Just do it! What kind of game is it going to be? It's a bipolar situation with Kevin King, and I wanted to convey that. I'm sorry if it crackled on your speakers. This happens when you get an hour into the video. Podcast says, sorry, been dealing with kids. I know how that goes 100%. Pac-Man got back from work. Can't wait for the game on Sunday night. Packers and Seahawks. Go, Pack, go. Packers 31-13. Alexander. I agree. That's my score prediction as well. We are on the same wavelength, and I appreciate that. I think the Packers do have themselves. I mean, I usually say this stuff for final thoughts, but who am I kidding? You guys are probably going to tune in anyway, or you won't watch, and you're here supporting this. So if you've hung around for an hour, the least I can do is let you know how I feel the game's going to go. I think Green Bay will show up on Sunday. Now, I've been wrong only 3 times this season because I've picked Green Bay all 16 games, and I had arguments on why Green Bay would win all 16 games, but I was 13-3 this year with my records or my game predictions, so stick with me. There's a high probability I will get this one right. I think Green Bay goes out there. I think they win 31-13. I think for the most part, that run offense is going to be too much for Seattle to handle. I think if they decide to focus on stopping the run, which it would behoove them to do that. I think that they need to just kind of settle into knowing that they're the 22nd ranked defense and maybe focus a little bit more on Rodgers. But one way or the other, either one of those Aarons is going to feast. And if they decide to stop the run, it's going to be Rodgers. If they decide to keep the pass going, it's going to be Jones. I see us kind of having a little bit of an outbreak as far as the offensive performance. So, I mean, guys, we're talking 4 touchdowns and a field goal is how you get yourself to 31 points. I think this is going to be, they're going to be capable of putting that together. I see them having 20 points at halftime, and I think them kind of coasting through that second half and really having that defense hunker down is probably how this game's going to unfold. But for the most part, Russell Wilson doesn't worry me too much. He's going to be a very talented quarterback. He's a guy that was an MVP consideration for most of the season, but really quieted down in the second half when he had the lack of talent at receiver to kind of back that up. So I think Green Bay will come away. Alexander, 31-13. I'm right there with you. Breakout players for Sunday. If I had to pick a breakout player for Sunday, check out my Sunday conversation. I'm going all dark horse on them. I mean, we need solid performances from people who have struggled this season. So I'm looking at you, Kevin King. I need you to have a breakout performance and play good. I'm looking at you, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I don't think you are falling off the wagon, but you played 15% better than you have all season. That will be a huge difference maker. But my breakout player for the playoffs, not only Sunday, but if the season continues after Sunday, I'm looking at Jimmy Graham. I think that Jimmy Graham has to find and turn on something to get him back to playing his youthful ways when these games matter. He's had a down year last year. He's struggled throughout the regular season. He's got the height. I feel like he can catch the ball, but I haven't been able to see it. That's my breakout player. I'm going to take a shot in the dark horse with this one. I want to see Jimmy Graham succeed just because adding that element of his just skill set and a tight end of his ability, if he can play up to his ability, would be one hell of a problem for any defense that we face. What's your pick for Minnesota versus San Francisco? Haven't really put a whole lot of thought into that. I mean, I've decided that I'm cheering for Minnesota. I'm not sure if you guys are in that same mindset as I am. I expect that Minnesota will run the ball. What Kirk Cousins are you going to get for that game? Who really knows? I'd anticipate that he'd put a pretty good game together. But I want Minnesota to win. I don't know if Minnesota can win. It's going to be a close game one way or the other. I mean, we're probably going to go, I don't know, 17-14. You pick the winner. I think it's not going to be as high of a scoring game. You're going to get some really good defenses going at each other, and Garoppolo is going to have to see how he performs in the playoffs. He's a little bit untested as well as far as playoff games. Don't forget that one. Sorry, AO, to your ears. I know I shouldn't shout, but the Tourette's just catches up with me sometimes. Packers 33, Seahawks 20. That's Melanie's prediction. 23-13 Green Bay. That's AO. Baltimore versus Kansas City. Who wins? I'm going to take Baltimore. I think maybe not let's see how this weekend shakes out. Patrick Mahomes has some experience in some of these bigger playoff games, and if I had to, my gut wants to tell me that Lamar Jackson, who's having one hell of a season, a 14-2 best record in the league, and what he's been able to do and showcase this year, my gut wants to tell me that nobody's going to be able to stop Baltimore. But how quick, this is that whole short-term memory loss when it comes to the NFL. Let's not forget what Patrick Mahomes and how talented that offense is. Mahomes has played in big games before. He's had to climb over or try to get past the Tom Brady mountain before. That's no longer there. I'd be surprised if now that Tom Brady's out of the way that he struggles so much with Lamar Jackson. So I really want to see how that one pans out before I give you my game prediction on that one, because they're not even playing this weekend, and we need something to talk about next week as well. Packers are going to bring it. Breakout offense, Rodgers finally, and defense, Preston Smith. Heard about illness going around the locker room. That is correct. LaFleur said that in his press conference today. Just preaching to the guys to stay healthy, proper hygiene, get your rest, and all that good stuff. That's probably the reason why Lazard has sat out of practice today. And there was a couple other guys that sat out as far as the injury report, or they didn't have an injury report, but just who sat out of practice today. Hopefully that gets itself through the system. I could not imagine playing football with like a flu or anything, like running a fever. That would be absolutely miserable. I'm like a little baby wrapped up in a blanket on my couch whenever I get sick. I could not go out there and hit someone or play full speed. That would absolutely be miserable. Graham is an outstanding choice. Bet Seattle is not prepared for him. Thank you, Alexander, for that compliment. How much will Seattle injury list be a factor for our game on Sunday? It's Sunday. It's going to snow in Wisconsin on Sunday. At the moment, thoughts? I don't know if it is going to snow. They've been all over the place with this forecast. Some models are showing some snow in Green Bay. Some are just showing upper 20s and partly cloudy skies. It's Lambeau. It's a night game because it gets dark at 4:30 in Wisconsin. It's a night game. It's a playoff game. You have the ability to move on to the NFC Championship game. They will know by kickoff whether or not they will be traveling to San Francisco or get to host another game with a win against Seattle before kickoff. So there's a lot of elements that Green Bay is going to have at their disposal with that other game taking place the Saturday before. But regardless of the weather, it could be 65 and global warming, and Green Bay should still get the nod as far as home field advantage over the Seattle Seahawks. We've had to travel to Seattle far too many times and play in that hostile environment, and we almost snuck away with it back in 2014. I think that just the home field advantage is the bigger thing more than the weather. But as far as the injury list, I'm going to have to dive into it. I usually don't talk about injury lists until final thoughts because a lot of things can change. So interesting to think about. And with that, it is 10:16 Central Standard Time, 1 hour and 16 minutes. I think this is probably my longest live Q&A, but it's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for all tuning in and checking out the video. I'm like on autopilot right now. Go Pack Go. Final thoughts video will post either late Thursday night or Friday. When that posts, give me some love, like the video, comment down below, share it with family and friends. We only have so many weeks before I can try to hit 1,000 subscribers. I got up to 894 with one new subscriber tonight. I'd love to hit 1,000 before the season ends. And as long as we make it to the Super Bowl, that buys us a little bit more time. But yeah, go Packers. 100% go Packers. I texted my wife this morning, told her where her Blake Martinez jersey is, that she's got to be wash it and get it ready for the game. I'm jacked. It feels like so long since there's been playoff football for the Packers. It's only been 2 years. I can only imagine what it's like for some of those NFL teams out there that just don't get the taste of the playoffs very often. So go Pack Go. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, folks, I will see you on the internet. Go Pack Go.